sweet home here at Ford Center at the Star in Frisco. This is Cowboys Night here on TXA 21 and DallasCowboys.com. Bill Jones along with Isaiah Stanback. We are here for the next couple of hours. We're moments away from the opening ceremonies, and then the Cowboys will have a 2-hour practice here at the Star. It's great to be home, Isaiah.
It's finally great to be home. We've been back down there in Oxnard, been in Denver, been back down to LA again. Finally back in Dallas.
And it's going to be fun to watch the first teamers in action out here on the practice field. Brad Sham is addressing the crowd that has gathered for this open practice. Let's take a listen in to what Brad is having to say right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the owner, president, and general manager of the Dallas Cowboys. Welcome, Jerry Jones.
Boy, Brad Sham. What can you say about Brad Sham? He's older than the Cotton Bowl. He's a great treasure of the Dallas Cowboys. Millions and millions have listened to our games and all over this nation, really, because we simulcast that all over the country when given the opportunity. Brad, it's great to see you again. Boy, it's great to kick this season off. Dana, with American Airlines, you know, when I think of the U.S., and I think that we live at the home of American Airlines. American Airlines has over 250,000 employees around the country. When I saw American Airlines recently name the airplane after the Medal of Honor recipients, Valor, I knew right then what American thought of its heritage and what it is in our community and what it means to us. We want you to know, Dana, that it's no small part that for the Cowboys to get to fly on American, for us to get to associate, rub elbows. I've known for a long time that when you choose your partners and they're strong and they can endure, then you've got you a partner. American Airlines, after some of the roughest times in the history of business, air business especially, has just come out, and again, just like I want these Dallas Cowboys to do, when you knock them on their butt, they get up stronger than ever. I want to congratulate you for what American Airlines has been. Well, I just have to tell you how rewarding it is to see you, each of you, here today. When we thought of what the Star could be, when we had the opportunity to join with your great city and your great educational department, and we had your great leaders have enough confidence in the Cowboys to build what is the Star today, I just thought I knew what the end result might be. Mayor, I want to say this to all the constituencies, young and old in Frisco. Thank you, thank you, thank you for playing left tackle, right guard, and running back for the Dallas Cowboys. We appreciate you very, very much. Years ago, my coach took me in college, took our team that was going to play in the Cotton Bowl the first day of January. They took our team to Houston to work out and get out of all the hoopla going on January the 1st. While we were there, our coach took us on a field trip, and they took us to the Astrodome. The Astrodome then had never had a game played in it. It was finished, but never had a game played in it. I was about 19, and when I walked in that Astrodome, I really couldn't believe that sports and that people were going to play baseball and football in that Astrodome. That was 19, when I was 19. Years went by. I always had a big interest. I wanted to talk about the people that did it, the people involved, the teams that played in it. About 25 years later, I had a chance to think about building a stadium. And I want you to know that I didn't know where I was going to get the money for sure to build the AT&T Stadium, or for that matter, this Star. But what I did know was that a man had done the Astrodome. Men and women had done the Astrodome. I didn't know where I was going to get the money, but I knew a man can do it. What happens when you see it done young or you see it done with confidence, you know it can be done. It's the greatest gift. And you can put 5 of those damn Astrodomes in the AT&T Stadium today. You're here to watch the Cowboys have our initial practice in the official season of 22. But what you're also here seeing is that on Thursdays and Fridays, you'll see high school students and you'll see high school players, if you will. And they'll step out here. A lot of them will be mildewing around on this field with Dallas Cowboy players. And then they can look over there and they can see Zeke Elliott. They can see Dak Prescott. They can see Lamb. And they know that they're real too. Oh yeah, they're special as players, but I could be that one day too. It's called confidence. It's called confidence. If we do nothing with sports, we build confidence in each other to give us the strength to dare to do it. Thank you so much for supporting the Dallas Cowboys. We love you. You're our left tackle. Let's have a great year. Coach McCarty's getting them ready to play. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Thanks to all of the Frisco ISD, all the city officials here today, the entire Jones family, and a very special thanks to all Cowboy fans for your continued support of America's team. Now, let's play some football. The 2022 Dallas Cowboys training camp in Frisco, Texas is officially underway.
I've been trying to show everybody that I'm a receiver as well. You know, I do special teams. I can do that in my sleep. You know, that's easy for me. So I'm basically trying to show the Cowboys, you know, I can be a receiver on this level too.
Just a return man on this team. Cavante, you could be anything you want to be after what we saw on Saturday night at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. Welcome back to Cowboys Night here. Bill Jones, Isaiah Stanback, now joined by Kyle Yeomans as we take in this Cowboys practice. We'll be with you all the way to 8 o'clock. Great to hear Jerry Jones and Brad Sham on the opening ceremonies, welcoming the crowd here that is gathered to watch this practice, and they sound excited. Jerry sounds excited about this team, and what we saw on Saturday night looked a lot better than the previous Saturday night, Kyle.
Yeah, it really did, and that was the biggest thing, is you wanted to see improvement, and you saw that in really all 3 phases. The offensive line played better against the Chargers than they did against Denver. Then you had the quarterback play. While it wasn't a whole lot because the special teams unit, of course, had Cavante Turpin return a couple of touchdowns, you felt better about the overall showing, not only on Saturday, but also throughout the week. I mean, Isaiah, you were out of practices as well, and you got to see not only the explosiveness from Cavante Turpin, but really it felt like an overall answer after a down week in Denver.
You're absolutely correct. These guys came back with a vengeance. Obviously, they had a rough week against Denver. They didn't have the practice week that they wanted, but they also did not have the game that they wanted, right? So these guys didn't perform well, but they responded. Whatever coach said to them, it worked. I don't know if Jerry walked in the locker room. I don't know what Coach McCarthy said, but the guys came out. They had a great week of practice against the Chargers, and then they showed up in the game. You see Jerry Jones had a little pep in his step. I don't know if he had a little turpentine, but he felt good walking out here today.
And I think and Cowboys fans with a little pep in their step as well coming in here. Of course, this is a huge week here in Frisco, kicking off with tonight's practice, which we're broadcasting live, not only on TXA 21, but DallasCowboys.com. Another open practice tomorrow night. The big night on Thursday when Michael Irvin, and starting early Thursday morning, Stephen A. Smith and First Take, and Michael Irvin and Jerry Jones will be there. And then it culminates on Friday night with the Cowboys and Seahawks. And Kyle will be along on Saturday afternoon for the Jerry Jones Classic, Rockwall and Cedar Hill High School football. A little bit for everybody throughout this week.
That's the cool part about this week is not only were you really kind of chomping at the bit for the Cowboys to get back on the field in Oxnard, and Cowboys fans everywhere were excited to see so and excited to get at least football back, but now once they're back in Texas, they do so in a huge way. I mean, every single day there's something for Cowboys fans to be a part of, and really, for the most part, all of it is free up here at the Star. I mean, it's all in one central location, and it's been, it's been fun to this point, but this week is just one of those launching pads for what this 2022 season is going to look like.
Yeah, fans, come be a part of this. This is absolutely awesome. You guys know that Jerry Jones is all about the people, so he has set up this thing, obviously the facilities, everything that's around here, obviously bringing all ESPN always coming down here. Those guys are going to be kicking things off. You talked about the high school game. You talked about the practices. Come be a part of it, you guys. This is absolutely awesome. Dallas Cowboys need y'all support this year, so come out here and kick this year off right.
They've got it tonight. I mean, this crowd has been fantastic, and they've been here for quite some time. I mean, we had already been set up on the stage, and this entire crowd had started filling in. They're still coming in.
And they're
standing room only. I mean, this is a fantastic crowd for a practice.
Yeah.
And this is your opportunity to watch the ones, too.
That's a good point.
You got the starters out here. And let's get you caught up on some of the news of the day, as all teams in the NFL had to get down to the 80-man roster limit. So 5 roster moves made today by the Cowboys. Jeremy Sprinkle, the veteran tight end, was placed on injured reserve with an Achilles injury. Liram Hairulahu, the place kicker, was cut today. So for now, the Cowboys going with the veteran Brett Maher. And Mike McCarthy in his press conference just over an hour ago said one of the differences there is they like the numbers as far as they trusted the numbers on Brett Maher as far as his kickoffs are concerned. But it remains to be seen, as we're now less than 3 weeks away from the season opener against Tampa Bay. Christian Sam was waived injured, and it was Jacory Roberson and Quandre Mosley were cut today to get down to 80. This is the big week ahead now, as next Tuesday is when all teams have to get down to 53. One of the significant things today, Kyle, is the fact that Michael Gallup, they're giving it another week on Michael Gallup to determine whether or not he's on active PUP right now. As of today, NFL teams can place those players on reserve PUP, and Britt Brown apparently is giving Mike McCarthy and the staff a good report on Michael Gallup. He's coming along right now. They may take it all the way up to next Tuesday before they decide what to do with his status.
Yeah, the fact that they're even going all the way up into that deadline is already a good sign, because that means that he's on the border. You're not automatically counting him out for the first month of the season, and that's what it would be if he was placed on PUP. He would not be available until after the game against Washington in Week 4, and Washington placed the guy that they are counting on, and Chase Young, on the PUP list today too. So teams already know what those injury timelines look like. The fact that the Cowboys are saying we're blessed. I mean, Mike McCarthy said we have been blessed to this point. Michael's done great in his rehab, and the fact that he's even out there running routes, though it is a little bit shaky in terms of what he's still got a long way to go, Isaiah. You saw it out there in LA. But the fact that he's not on that list is a huge plus for the Cowboys, and it could bode well for him even being back week 2, week 3 even.
And that should be a vote of confidence for all Dallas Cowboys fans out there. Take it from somebody who's had their share of injuries. This is the best training staff that you could ever hope for. Yeah. So when you hear a report from Britt Brown, one of the most precise, most toughest rehab specialists out there, if he's saying that you're on the right track or you're ahead of schedule, then please believe exactly what he's telling you.
He's one of the best in the league.
Absolutely.
And Kyle mentioned Chase Young, of course, the pass rusher, the elite pass rusher for the Washington Commanders, placed on reserve PUP today. Keep in mind the Cowboys play Washington the 4th game of the season, so Chase Young will not be playing against the Cowboys.
Maybe not a win in terms of the scoreboard, but that's a win that you don't have to see 99 on the other side of the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and along those lines, Kayvon Thibodeau for the Giants is coming back from an injury, and the timeline on him brings him back maybe in time for week 3 when the Cowboys play a Monday night game at the New York Giants.
And all of a sudden, you look on the other side of the division, you're like, wow, there's a lot of pass rushers there. I mean, Philadelphia still has all their guys, so keep that in mind. But now that you don't have New York, and you might not, or you won't have Washington, you might not have New York, it feels pretty good, right?
I'll take it a step further. the Detroit Lions today put Jamison Williams on the PUP list too, and they're saying it'll be mid-season for him. He was the 12th pick in the draft. He suffered an ACL injury in the national championship game for Alabama, so the timeline on him is similar to when Michael Gallup had his ACL surgery. And if it's mid-season, the Cowboys play Detroit week 7. So the Cowboys might miss Jamison Williams too. So all sorts of good news around the league.
Let's keep knocking on wood. let's not get carried away. We got 3 weeks until week 1.
There you go. Hey, but we will say this: Tom Brady did return to practice for
there we go. Let's
Tampa
even it out a
Bay
little bit
yesterday.
Here.
So there you go.
Sure, he doesn't need to take another trip.
and Mike Evans returned as well. All right, right now, teams working on team fundamentals and special teams as well, as you see. Bones Fossil working with the special teamers there, and there's one very special teamer that we started this segment out with, and that was number 2, Cavante Turpin. There he is.
Are you guys still amazed that this guy was told to take his pads off after the first half? This isn't a first-round draft pick. It's not a second-round draft pick. Young man, go out there and make some plays. Oh, by the way, you've done enough. Go sit down.
Well, that's the thing is that was what was amazing about it, was that he earned that right. It wasn't just the 1 return, it was the 2 returns. We talked about it on the broadcast on Saturday. The fact that he made the team with the first return. The second return, though it be a kick return and a punt return, that adds to the value of it. That's when you're like, okay, let's take a step back here. You're a weapon. We need you going forward. That I am amazed by it. But he earned that. He
took all conversations about potentially that maybe that was luck. Maybe you got lucky on that one, right? Or maybe it was just a perfect scenario for you. He took that. That was not luck. He took that out the equation. The man doubled down on it, okay? He doubled down. He went all chips in. He told us that week in practice that he was going to return everything that he possibly could, and that's exactly what he did.
He did tell us that in practice. And we going back to the week he was signed, I had a sit down with him in Oxnard one-on-one, and he told me at the time, he was like, I asked him what his goal was, and he said, I want to break Devin Hester's records. Ooh. And I mean, at the time, yeah, I was like, cool, set your goals high, set your stakes high, and go and reach it. The fact that he was able to do that in the first, or really the second game that he's been a part of in the NFL, the sky's the limit. He's just got to get there and continue with the duration that Devin Hester did at one point. But when he said it initially, it was okay, cool, great job, good goal.
Sure.
But now it's like, okay, there's a little question there.
Man, the crazy thing is he's like a computer, because he sat up there and told us in the first game that he was simply just digesting and just absorbing information, right? He was saying, okay, let me see how fast these guys are. Let me see the angles that they're taking. Let me get an idea of the pace of the game. He said, but in the second game, I already downloaded all that information, so now I'm about to go out there and put this new program out there, and that's exactly what he went out there and did.
So if that's the goal for Cavante Turpin, just looking up at Devin Hester's career numbers in the NFL, 3-time first-team All-Pro, member of the All-Decade team in the 2000s and the 2010s, the 100th anniversary all-time team, 20 total return touchdowns in his career. That's how high he has set the bar.
That's where he wants to go. I'm not comparing the two, but the fact that he had a kick and a punt return in the same game, it shows he's at least got an opportunity.
So you're saying if this wasn't preseason, he would already be 10% there. That's what you're telling me right now. He would be 10% of his way there.
That's a great point. He could get that by week 11. Be ready to go.
By the way, and of course, as Cavante said at the outset of this segment, he wants to work himself he wants to be a part of the offense as well. And when you look at the numbers at the wide receiver position as cut-down day comes a week from tonight, it's going to be very interesting to see what the Cowboys are wind up doing at wide receiver. Well, with the injury situation with James Washington and Michael Gallup and what we've seen out of the rookie receivers this camp.
And he wants to continue to add value to this organization. Obviously, they understand that he's a return man. That's what they brought him here to do. But to your point, he's mentioned various times that he wants to be a contributor on the offensive side of the ball as well. And in order to do that, he can't become just a gimmick guy. He can't just become a fly sweep guy. He can't just be a screen guy. He wants to be a person that Dak can rely on to run routes, whether it be slant routes, quick out routes, whatever is required to move the chains, and then occasionally be able to take a shot down the field. If he can do that for this team, he's going to be a huge addition.
And that's one of the dominoes that falls from the Michael Gallup conversation that we were having earlier. Yeah. If he's not on PUP, that's another wide receiver spot that you need to put on your active roster, because you can't stash him on PUP or on IR are moving forward. That's a good thing. You want Michael Gallup to be available, but that doesn't allow for young receivers like Simi Fehoko and T.J. Vasher, Brandon Smith, who's had a great camp so far, to get an opportunity.
And Isaiah, how big is this when we're looking at special teams here and working on gunner drills and things like that? We saw Dennis Houston in the game the other night, had a tackle on a punt coverage. He was first down on kick coverage as well. Especially for these young receivers to be able to contribute on special teams is huge, right?
It's absolutely huge. And this drill that you're watching right now on your screen, these are the type of drills that prevent teams from being able to have returns like Turpin had against the Chargers. You know, this is a punt coverage drill. So what you're seeing here is Simi Fehoko holding his man off, ripping him by, coming underneath, and securing the tackle. If you don't have this technique down, then all of a sudden you're still attached to that man. And then you're able to get blocked. And now all of a sudden you're giving a return man space to get returns. So as you're seeing these drills come across your screen, don't just write them off as, whatever, that's boring, that's not for real football. This is a third of the game that you guys just saw show up.
And it's not just the wide receivers either.
No.
It's all these young players. Look at running back right now. The situation at running back, usually you only take 3 guys, but Malik Davis is making things tough on Rico Dowdle. Dowdle's the more experienced guy, and he's been better on special teams than Malik Davis. Malik Davis might be the leading rusher in the preseason, and he may be on the bubble to make the roster just based off of the fact that he's not as good of a special teams player.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind moving forward. It's not just wide receiver, it's these corners, the safeties, running backs that are also trying to make an impact on this unit as well.
And to add on to that, see, everybody hears 53-man roster. Everybody hears the 53 guys that can be on the active roster. But the thing is, when it comes to game time, only 48 of those guys can actually suit up, right? So those 48 guys suit up. You have to chop 5 guys down. So now all of a sudden, you're looking at 24 guys on each side of the ball that can actually show up and play. So the more that you can do, the easier it is to make the decision on his coaches to see who can go out and contribute that day.
Look who's out there at practice today. You got the rookie 5th-round draft pick, Matt Waletzko, number 71.
Yeah.
I love it. I love seeing him out there. But, Isaiah, you suffered the same sort of injury he did on the shoulder, and you did not play through it as you were a wide receiver at the time, right?
Yeah, well, I did play through it. So I sustained it my first and my second year. So
he didn't play offensive tackle through it.
That's kind of what I was leading to.
Yeah, so what you're seeing there, I mean, this is a tough injury, especially for his position, simply because of the fact that anything that jolts his shoulder can pop his shoulder out of place. So the fact that he's out there right now, he is showing that he's a tough young cat right now. He's a big boy, right? But that doesn't mean that he's automatically tough. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he responds to this with that injury at that position, because everything that he does requires him to strike with those hands and that shoulder.
Did you see how quickly Isaiah turned that around? He said, I did play through it. I did. I was able to work through it. But it is different. I mean, you think about, you're going up against the biggest, the quickest guys in the league. And if you're the tackle out on an island, you're going to have leverage. Where does that leverage start? It starts from your lower body, but especially up on the shoulders, you're going to have some correction there.
And this is a critical thing this week for this team.
Yeah.
The Cowboys have to figure out if Matt Waletzko can contribute this season.
Yeah.
And they've got to determine how that shoulder is in workouts this week. And is he a candidate to be one of those guys who they keep on the 53 and then they put him on IR where he would miss at least the first 4 weeks of the season? Or is he a guy that they just have to put on IR prior to the 53, meaning he's out for the entire season? If he can't go, when they drafted him, it was with the idea he might be able to be that swing tackle, he or Josh Ball, from the 4th rounder from last year, who we've seen this preseason, where they don't have to go out and get a veteran tackle to be the swing tackle behind Tyron Smith and Terrence Steele.
Now, that's a great point. I was just about to say it before you said that. In terms of this week, why is it so important that he's out here today? They need to find out. They need to know what they're dealing with, right? You talk about next Tuesday being the deadline, that they need to be able to make a decision on guys that are in his situation who have injuries that they're dealing with. They need to find out, can he contribute? Can he hold up? Can he play through this pain? You know, I was able to do so, but I was, like you mentioned, I was playing receiver. I was trying to run away from guys as much as I could.
He's going into
contact every single time. Now, will he be a starter? Most likely not, but he needs to be an available option for that. And you said the best The best availability is, I'm sorry, what's
best ability
is availability. There you go. All right, and he has to be that. So he has to show that this week in practice. If he can find himself on his roster.
It's part of why you look at the quarterback situation with Will Grier the way that he is. He's been available, or excuse me, Cooper Rush has been available where Will Grier has had limited practice. And so on the same timeline, I mean, Willetsko has not had the same type of practice that Josh Ball has. Now, Josh Ball has had his ups and his downs. He played better against the Chargers, but ultimately he still has not been great. So you got to find a way to balance that between Willetsko and Ball if you're going to have him, either one of those guys, as the swing tackle.
And speaking of number 15, Will Grier, Mike McCarthy was asked about him today. It's good to see him out on the practice field. He's still nursing that groin injury. And what McCarthy told the media at 5 o'clock this afternoon is that he would like to give a good chunk of the game on Friday to Will Grier. And so it's good to see him out on the practice field. Maybe they'll be able to do that and get a good read on him on Friday.
And for him, that's encouraging because they're giving him every opportunity to win that backup quarterback position. Obviously, Cooper Rush has had more reps in him to date. Obviously, he haven't played the first and the second game. He got in there last week. Neither one of them have amazed or dazzled any of the coaches. They're both hanging around 55%, I think, completions. Cooper Rush has one interception in there. They need to see more from both of these guys, but I think that they have seen less of Grier because of his inability to be available at practice.
They haven't seen enough.
Yep.
Out of either one of those guys. Cooper Rush, if anything, they've seen enough of Cooper Rush. They know what he is. He's been in the league for so long, going into his 6th year. But for Will Grier, they want to see more. He hasn't given them more, and it's not necessarily his fault. He's playing through an injury. But at the same time, if you're a backup quarterback, you need to be available.
And you were talking about the injury that he has, right? He has a groin. Everybody knows the Dak dance, okay? Everybody knows that little flick of the hips all day long. Everything that
Would you like to demonstrate?
No, I'm not going to show that today. The camera doesn't have that kind of quality. But everything that you do at the quarterback position requires you to utilize that groin. So it's very challenging for him to nurse that back to health while he's still actively practicing. But guess what? You're playing, and this is your last opportunity to win the backup quarterback job.
The offensive featured player of the practice, Will Grier at number 15. And, the interesting thing about him, too, from the game on Saturday night, on that 4th down play, he scrambled and got the first down and kept the drive alive. That was a good sign for him as far as his mobility. But I just think that he has intriguing talent, and so you want to see that in a live game situation here in the preseason.
And I think that's going to be challenging for him this week, too, especially with him with that injury. He's a very athletic quarterback. He's the most athletic between him and Cooper Rush. That is his strength.
That's what he did at West Virginia. That's why he was a Heisman finalist. It's the way he can move and manipulate a pocket to his advantage.
So now you take that away.
What do you do? It's a big-time question. He's going to have to show it in practice, I think, and then show it in the game as well to actually have a legitimate shot. Now, don't rule out the fact that they keep both of these guys. They could very easily. Cooper Rush is a vested veteran. He doesn't have to go through waivers. So you could go to Cooper Rush, and at some point along these next couple of weeks, you could have a Cooper Rush cut. Everybody's going to say, oh, my goodness, Will Grier won the quarterback job. But then the next day, Cooper Rush signs back when guys go on IR, guys go on PUP, and those roster spots are available. These two guys could be very much so on your roster. If you cut Will Grier, he has to go through waivers, and a team can pick him up. It's what happened to Garrett Gilbert last season.
We've seen it in the past with the Cowboys going back 15 years ago. Matt Moore got the end of he had a nice last game of the preseason, and then the Carolina Panthers picked him up, and the Cowboys lost a quarterback. And of course, everyone's always looking for quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
And so it's such an important position. And Will Grier's had an opportunity in this league with Carolina, but not much of an opportunity. And it's just going to be interesting to see what the Cowboys decide to do at that quarterback position. And you talk about the roster maneuvering that can take place. They can do that with special teams players, like with the long snapper Jake McQuaid, with the kicker. They cut one kicker today. They could cut the other kicker. That doesn't mean they're going to play a game without a kicker.
There's a whole lot of moving that has to take place. Obviously, there's with the PUP and the IR and the cutting and the waivers and the eligibility and the veteran. And there's so many intricate aspects of this decision making. And you guys the fans are going to see a lot of moving parts here coming up soon. But in terms of the conversation of holding running 3 quarterbacks. I'm not sure if they're in a position to do that this year with how competitive it is at some of these other roster spots.
Okay, so that brings up the conversation. I mean, it is an extended practice squad.
Yeah, true.
So you do have more spots there, and for the most part last year they kept 3 quarterbacks. Ben DiNucci was on the active roster. He was just inactive the majority of the time. I think it was like 15 out of the 17 games he was inactive. So that's the decision you're ultimately going to have. Is it worth having 3 quarterbacks on your roster, or do you just go with 2 and save a spot elsewhere? Because that's a whole conversation, especially when you've got a defensive line that looks heavy.
Yep.
You've got cornerbacks that look heavy. You've got even running back that looks heavy this year.
You know, as we watch the special teams portion of practice, I think for people who are not privy to watching practice, like you two have been, and Oxnard and so forth, it's very interesting to see how much time that teams spend on special teams in practice. This is a typical practice where this is a 17-minute period devoted entirely to special teams.
Wow. But it's very important, and I want the people to understand that. So what you're seeing here, you saw some tackling drills, right? Some tackling and tracking. So being able to find a guy, track his speed, track the angle, and be able to shoot the hip is what they call it, and be able to take your shot at tackling him. Think about the tackles, the open field tackles that Deron Bland has made. Think about the Israel Mukwamo, the tackles that he's made. Yes, this is a special teams drill, but those same fundamentals show up on defense. The punch-out drill, where you see these guys going and clubbing and ripping over the top, and the guys that are protecting the ball and the guys that are coming over the top trying to punch the ball out. That's going to show up some point in time in this season. Everybody's going to think, hey, we need a big play. All of a sudden, there's going to be somebody who punches the ball out. There's going to be a scoop and score, big opportunity. The ball drills, to be able to track the balls. Nashawn Wright, what did he do last week? He sat back there, tracked the quarterback's eyes, saw the route, and was able to pick the ball off. These things carry over not only from special teams but the defense as well.
So what you're saying is there's a fundamental period.
Absolutely.
Then there's a special teams period, but for the most part it overlaps because you can use that elsewhere. You mentioned some of those names. Isaac Taylor Stewart made multiple open field tackles on Saturday against Los Angeles. That's something he didn't necessarily do a whole lot during his time at USC because he was mostly a lockdown corner in the Pac-12. So now he's got a chance to make an open field tackle. He does it on special teams and he does it in the game. It kind of plays over that direction. I went to a collegiate practice this morning in the area, and they spent probably 10, 15 minutes of their session in a special teams practice. So it's very important even from a collegiate level, and these NFL players, they need it as well.
Isaiah, are you willing to take a guess which practice that Kyle might have attended?
You could probably figure it out.
I'm glad to see that you didn't wear green out here.
I'm working, Bill. I've got things to do. Go Mean Green. But.
He's got Mean Green underneath that Cowboys polo that he has on right now.
Got Mean Green draws.
How the Mean Green looking? They're opening with UTEP, right?
Yes, opening with UTEP on Saturday, a little week 0, but yeah, they look good. They look good. I'm excited for the season.
All right, very good. All right, and Kyle is going to rejoin us later as we get into team stuff for the final half hour of this practice. Kyle will join us, and we've got other members of the DallasCowboys.com team joining us, including Patrick Walker when we come back here in just a moment, as the Cowboys are just getting started with this practice, and we'll be back with more of Cowboys Night here at Ford Center at the Star in Frisco in just a moment.
I'd be like, dang, I should have had this, dang, I should have had that. But you know, you can't reverse time, so I'm just trying to get better and better every day.
Williams, the Cowboys' second-round draft pick out of Ole Miss, the Bank of America defensive featured player of the practice. Bill Jones, along with Isaiah Stanback, and now joined in this segment, he is the DallasCowboys.com featured reporter of this segment, Patrick Walker. Welcome to Cowboys Night, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
At Voice of the Star on Twitter, right?
Yes, that is
correct.
There
you go.
No C.
No C. Patrick, no C.
There you go.
That's right. So what are you thinking, Patrick?
I'm thinking that this practice is great for the fans. It's great for the Cowboys to be back home in Dallas. I mean, they had a long trip out in Oxnard, which was a great productive trip. Hopped over, had a scrimmage against the Broncos, 2 scrimmages against the Chargers. We were able to see them clean up some things against the Chargers over their scrimmaging game against the Broncos. And now they're looking to just keep the things going, keep the momentum going as the Cowboys, walk into these tough decisions for these final roster cuts.
Isaiah, take us through what the team is doing right now here in practice.
So we just talked about special teams drills, but now you're starting to see the individual drills. So you see Big Ridgeway right there. You see him getting off. They have the big, heavy sandbags chucking the ball. You got the quarterbacks working with the running backs, just working on a lot of the fundamentals, okay? So when you see, like Dak Prescott, he looks through his first, second, third read. Well, guess what? He needs to go through his progression and come to a check down quickly so that you can move the ball progressively down the field. It's the plays that the fans don't necessarily like to see, but it's the important plays that keep the chains moving.
These are the fundamentals. These are how you win football games. And obviously the splash plays, the flash plays, those are what sell tickets, and those help in the progression of winning a potential Super Bowl. But it starts right here in these particular drills. You got to get the fundamentals down. You got to be able to read through progressions if you're a quarterback, make those throws. If you're a running back, you got to be able to identify lanes and then hit those lanes quickly as opposed to dancing in the backfield, run north-south instead of east-west.
And what you guys are seeing on your screen right now is the offensive line, and this is probably one of the more important drills that are taking place right now, is the fact that they have to continue to work on their communication. There's a thing called a stunt where defensive linemen are crossing their face and they have responsibilities, and it's the hardest thing not to follow what we call color and stay in your gap. But it takes good chemistry and it takes communication as these guys continue to work reps after rep after rep. So here you go, going here with a half line. So you see they're going with the center, the guard, and the tackle. Oh, they're going to switcheroo, all right? but these guys
You have to have position flexibility on that offensive
absolutely.
line, right?
But those are very important. Here, let's see what we have here. You see Coach Philbin getting on these guys. Boom, there it is. So they're going over their responsibilities. Where are your eyes at? It's about eye discipline. Linebackers are going to be coming from the second level. Linemen are going to be trying to cross your face. You still have to be disciplined, and you have to have that continuity with the guy that's next to you so that you don't have any seepage coming through.
And you have to be able to lock into the guy that's coming at you without crossing that boundary that goes into holding, because as we well know, the Cowboys have suffered a lot of penalties in 2021, and obviously against the Denver Broncos in the preseason opener, you saw some of those penalties show their face again. So as the Cowboys and Joe Philbin are teaching these offensive linemen to, follow their eyes and make sure that they're locking into guys, make sure that you're not over aggressive in how you're locking into these chest plates.
We talked about Sam Williams earlier in this segment, and what have you seen out of Sam so far in these preseason games?
He's got a lot of reps. I can tell you that much, Bill. They've been working his butt like a dog, and they're getting every square inch out of him. But he loves it. He's one of those guys that he's a workhorse. He's going to grab his lunch pail. He's going to show up every single day. He's not going to complain. We saw footage last week during the broadcast of some of the guys that he's working with, and in terms of just gaining knowledge from some of the veterans from the Cowboys organization. He is going to continue to download this information. He's going to continue to add to his moves. He's working with D-Law right here. He's working with Coach Quinn. And these guys are showing him the tricks of the trade. So he's a young bull right now that's just aggressive and loves it. Look at him. He's just having a ball. But Dan Quinn, that man right there, is going to continue to make deposits daily into him. And as long as he's receptive, he's going to continue to show up for the Dallas Cowboys.
And what I love about Sam Williams is that he, in fact, has been very receptive. This is a young guy who comes in, and he said at the beginning of training camp that he had some tools, but he was looking to kind of, to use your phrasing, download some more tools from players like DeMarcus Lawrence, whom we saw him working with just a few moments ago. But DeMarcus Lawrence, you talked to Tank, and he said that Sam Williams has more tools in his toolbox than he is already aware of. You saw him start to unleash a little bit of that against the Los Angeles Chargers. We've seen him with the ability to speed rush. We saw him with a magnificent bull rush against the Chargers. And I asked him about his arsenal after the game, and he said he's starting to feel like he's coming into his own. But in that same breath, he said he has a long way to go. That's the kind of mentality you want to see from a rookie.
You look at Adden Dirty, the defensive line coach, and it's very, very interesting. We talk about wide receivers and the cut down day coming up on Tuesday. It's going to be very interesting to see how things shake out on this defensive line.
I agree. This defensive line is going to be one of the more difficult positions to cut down, and it's a great problem to have if you're the Dallas Cowboys. You talk about the progression of Sam Williams. You look at Dorrance Armstrong having re-signed this offseason. Those are going to be your bookends opposite DeMarcus Lawrence on the left, but then you look on the interior defensive line, look what you got. You got Neville Gallimore. It looks like he's set up for a potential breakout season. Osa Odighizuwa, it looks like he's taking the next step. Chauncey Golston, Quentin Bohanna, and then you have the young bull and a guy like John Ridgeway. All of this is going to come together to make for a great problem for the Cowboys. They're going to try to see if they can get any of these guys that they end up waiving onto the practice squad, but it's not going to be a fun conversation, although it'll be a good one.
And we saw even Josiah Brunson last week against the Chargers, big number 94, making plays in the second half of that game.
He was getting in the
there's
backfield.
some talent on that field.
A ton.
I would not want to have to make the decision of what defensive lineman you're not going to keep. And I can tell you there's about 31 other teams in this league that are sitting there just waiting, seeing who the Dallas Cowboys are going to cut.
Do?
Exactly.
That's right. And then, okay, so look at the pass rusher, okay? You got in the offseason, you signed Dante Fowler, okay? And Fowler is a guy who, surprisingly to some, actually getting playing time in these first 2 preseason games. We saw him flash and show against the Chargers the other night.
Right.
And he needed to do that, I think, when you look at his contract and so forth. It really show that he still got it. And so you got Basham, you got others that are contending at that pass rusher position, that it's going to be interesting to see what the rotation winds up being.
It's going to be interesting to see what the rotation ends up being, and it's going to be interesting to see which one of these guys does not make the roster.
How about Tafua? He gets a sack the other day.
Absolutely. He showed up as well.
Carlos Watkins is a guy who showed up last season for the Cowboys.
Correct.
Started 14 games for him last year.
There you go. And you mentioned Dante Fowler, and it is good that you brought him up because he's had a bit of a mixed bag in training camp, and it could not have come at a better time for him to have such a strong outing like he did against the Los Angeles Chargers. A lot of times in the NFL, as you guys can well know, it's all about when you get hot, and he's getting hot right now at the right time because here come roster cut downs. Cowboys got to make these decisions. Fowler, who is going to be a Quinn guy, Quinn wants to see what he can get out of him, but the Cowboys want to see, what he can do in preseason, and that's why you see him taking so many preseason reps because his spot is not confirmed, but he's doing a great job as of late, giving himself a chance to stay.
It's really, I think it's pretty rare in the NFL to have as many position battles as what the Cowboys have. Anymore in the NFL, these rosters basically get set in the springtime, and basically training camp is you're practicing plays. But in this camp, there really is legitimate position battles going on across the board on this team right now.
And it's the culture that you want, Bill. You want a culture of competitiveness. You don't want it to be complacency. You don't want guys to feel entitled. Everybody needs to be looking over their shoulder, except for maybe one guy, all right, and trying to figure out who's –
I wonder who that guy is.
Exactly, all right, and trying to figure out who is pushing me, right? Who's making me better? Because the moment that you're not having to worry about your position is the moment that you get complacent and the moment that you're content. You need somebody that's going to be challenging you, who's going to be getting better progressively so that you can be at your best.
100%. And then one of the better position battles, we talk about the defensive line. Let's hop back 2 levels. Let's talk about this safety unit. The Cowboys have notoriously had an Achilles heel, so to speak, when it comes to the deficiency at safety. But under Dan Quinn, now they have an overflow of talent. You look at what Israel Mukuamu was able to do against the Los Angeles Chargers. He was flying all over the field. He was a man possessed. Now you have a situation where are you going to carry 4 safeties or are you going to extend that to 5? Because Dan Quinn also loves undrafted rookie Marquise Bell. And the flexibility that he has in his role to play that J-Ron Curse role. So are you going to carry 4 safeties, 5 safeties? You look at Wanye Thomas. He came on a little bit strong against the Chargers. Tyler Coyle is a guy. He's a hard-hitting safety, kind of in the Barry Church-esque lane. So you're going to have some decisions to make if you're the Cowboys. But, again, these are good problems to have.
And when you look at the Cowboys' base defense, the base defense is basically a 3-safety defense.
Yes.
With what you saw last
which makes
year.
you lean towards a 5-safety depth chart because of the fact that if any one of those guys goes down, then you just one away.
Patrick, when you look at this team as it comes down to cut-down day next Tuesday, what's one of the big things that you're looking at right now?
Right now I'm looking to see, outside of the safety position, I'm really curious to see how the Cowboys handle the wide receiver position. Behind CeeDee Lamb, you for the most part, you're going to assume that Noah Brown makes the team. He's having one of the best camps of anybody on the Cowboys roster, and there's chemistry between Noah Brown and Dak Prescott as Noah enters his 5th year in the league. But behind Noah Brown, Jalen Tolbert started off with a hot camp. He's kind of flummoxed a little bit lately. He needs to get his confidence back. But then you also look at Dennis Houston. He's stepping up.
You saw that. You heard that music, didn't you?
Yeah.
You know what that music means,
I know
right?
exactly what that means.
That's right. It means it's a Mojo moment. And right now we've got the Mojo moment. This happens in every practice, and the players don't know when it happens, but it's basically a momentum swing in the game. That's why it's a Mojo moment, and they're working down on the goal line in this Mojo moment. They'll get 5 reps down here, 1s against 1s to start with, and then you'll have 2s against 2s as well. It's a 2-point play competition is what the best of 5 is what they're looking at here in this Mojo moment.
It's good to see number 85 out there too, Bill.
And that defense takes that one.
1-0 defense.
Anthony Brown.
Who has had a fantastic camp. I venture to bet that it's inarguable that Anthony Brown has probably had a better camp than even Trevon Diggs, who himself has had a stellar camp as well for the most part.
And the fans should breathe a sigh of relief, Bill, seeing 88 and 85 both out there in
Noah
practice.
Brown and C.D. Lamb. Okay, you got the 2s and Cooper Rush at quarterback. Again, 2-point conversion play here. He converted one in the game the other night, found Jake Ferguson. It's a run this time. Stacked up inside.
Good penetration there by Chauncey Golston.
Score that one for the defense too.
Yes,
2-0.
sir.
There you go.
Best 3 out of 5. Defense has the lead right now in this Mojo moment.
Well, looks like the 1s are back.
Yep, so you got the 1s again, then the 2s will get another shot, and then the 1s again. Got Dennis Houston out there with the 1s.
He's one to watch.
Number 3, Dennis Houston. 3 receivers set. Fake to Tony Pollard, looking for the corner of the end zone, goes incomplete.
You know what, that Dennis Houston conversation is an interesting one. I was talking to somebody earlier today about that and saying that Dennis Houston's best asset is his worst asset. And what I mean by that is Dak Prescott is his guy.
Yes.
Dak loves Dennis Houston. He trusts him. He relies on him. He looks for him. But Dak Prescott doesn't play in the preseason.
That is true.
Dennis Houston needs the preseason to earn his spot on this roster. So when it comes down to those decisions and the coaches are back there in those meeting rooms that we're not privy to, what ends up happening with Dennis Houston?
That's a very good point, and I think it comes down to the totality of the conversation. Of course, they know that to this point he has established the chemistry with Dak Prescott. They may not be as evident with guys like Cooper Rush, Ben DiNucci, and now Will Grier, who has returned to the fold. But they've also seen Dennis Houston in practices. They've seen what he can do with the 1s on a regular basis. So I think that conversation is going to be a robust one. But if, for my money, knowing the macro of it, I still find a way to keep Dennis Houston on this roster.
Well, and this is very interesting as we look at one-on-ones here. Actually, I saw Jason Witten the other day.
Oh.
He asked me how they're looking in Oxnard. And the first thing he asked about was wide receivers. I know a lot of fans out there are wondering the same thing. What are they going to do? Especially when you see the outset of this season with the injury Gallup. We'll see if how quickly he's going to come back. The James Washington injury as well. And you've got 2 rookies that have been working a lot with the 1s. Noah Brown's had a good camp, though, a veteran guy to go along with C.D. Lamb. The question out there is, do they need to add a veteran for the first part of the season, or are they fine to go with what they have right now early in the season, considering how difficult it is a lot of times for a rookie to make a transition? They need these rookies to come in and play immediately.
I don't believe that the Dallas Cowboys are going to try to bring in a receiver. I think that they have a competitive enough group. I think that they have more depth than people are giving them credit for.
Dalton Schultz right there.
So you start talking about the top 4 guys, right? Prior to seeing this practice today, everybody was a little worried, right? James Washington out, Michael Gallup out, CD, Noah Brown. Those are your top 4 guys. You got Jalen Tolbert. He's a higher draft pick.
Right.
He's going to be there. He's going to be in there. Then all of a sudden, Kevontae Turpin says, hey, they say, take your pads off, son. Don't even play the second half. So you have to secure his spot at number 6.
Yep.
That's 6 receivers.
Yes, it is.
And here's Tolbert on Kelvin Joseph.
Going back to the conversation I was having about Tolbert a little bit earlier. Started off camp very hot, rookie 3rd-round pick. There's a lot on him and a lot of expectation in this wide receiver core going into 2022, but he's kind of fallen off the table a little bit as of late. He needs to kind of string together some good plays to build balance. Great play here by Ezekiel Elliott to get come on.
Devin Harper was the 6th-round draft pick was defending there, number 50.
But Jalen Tolbert has time on his side.
He does. He does. But and also to your point, you just named 6 receivers, but you have to throw Semi Fehoko in the mix as well as far as that conversation is concerned.
Jalen Tolbert has time on his side, but the Cowboys don't have time on their side because they're facing Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and then Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. There you go.
That was a great job.
Semi Fehoko.
Right on time.
Speaking of the
on
man
the
himself.
cue, Semi Fehoko has had a very strong camp, one of the strongest camps of any wide receiver for the Cowboys, and he's doing it in a lot of different ways. He's just put his speed on display and stretching the field. He's been able to use his physicality and size to box out defenders and get. Look at this. The athleticism has continually been on display for Semi Fehoko. So, yes, you named 6 receivers, and all of those are worthy of the conversation. And right on cue, Semi Fehoko enters the conversation as well.
So you have to look at that. If you're going to carry 7 somehow, some way, depending on what happens with Pup and IR, Semi Fehoko and Dennis Houston are vying for the same position.
I can agree with that. I can agree with that, which makes it a little bit more of a challenge because you have to then figure out who are you more willing to risk to waivers.
And that was Brandon Smith, number 80, with that catch.
He's done nothing but catch the ball when it comes his way.
You like one-on-ones, watching them in practice?
Love one-on-ones because it takes all the other elements out of it. Ooh.
Anthony Brown getting physical.
Handsy, if you will.
Noah Brown. I saw a yellow hanky down on the field.
Handsy, if you will.
I think they're trying Noah Brown. They saw he lost about 10, 15 pounds this year. They're like, let me see if he still has some strength at the line of scrimmage.
Jam him at the line a little bit. But Noah Brown, again, to his credit, and we've said it before, and we'll continue to say it as long as he continues to do so, he's having a fantastic camp for the Dallas.
See, he may be the guy. He's the veteran guy that this team needs to step up here in the first month of the season, don't you think?
I agree. I think he's going to be looked upon to be the next Cedric Wilson now that Cedric Wilson is no longer in Dallas. And here's his big opportunity to do so.
Looked like for a moment there, I thought Noah was talking to the camera.
He didn't like getting jammed up at the line of scrimmage. He had something to say about that.
And you love that fire, that chippiness. You love to see it.
Dak goes up top.
Dot.
Pretty ball.
Great coverage by Kelvin Joseph there. He didn't allow the receiver to get back on the outside, which is where he was trying to, but he didn't commit a penalty in the process. Good blanket coverage. He took the outside line where the trajectory was going, and he stayed there, held his position.
Peyton Hendershot, the tight end.
And they love his ability to go down the field. I know people haven't seen much of him. He made a couple plays in the preseason so far, but they like his ability to be able to stretch the field.
And by the way, with Sprinkle going on IR, Sean McEwen out of this practice with an ankle. The Cowboys have 3 tight ends right now in this practice. Dontario Drummond, the undrafted rookie out of Ole Miss, with that catch.
Oh, I want to see this one.
Fehoko against Deron Bland.
Oh, yes.
Trying to shake him.
Talk about having a great camp.
Bland.
Yeah, Deron Bland, number 30.
That's my MVP of the camp.
I don't disagree. And
mine's Micah.
Huh?
Mine's
oh, that's
Micah.
easy, Bill. That's easy. That's easy.
Okay.
Let's make it a little more challenging, Bill.
Aside from Micah.
Aside from
Deron
Micah.
Bland. There you go.
I can agree with that. And to be able to agree on that, and we're talking about a rookie, fantastic.
Uh-oh.
Ooh. Got him.
There you go. See a little Dennis Houston.
One of the better route runners already for the Cowboys.
Dennis Houston out of San Antonio Warren High School. Went to Houston Baptist for a year, then out to Sacramento College and wound up at Western Illinois. Here's Jake Ferguson, who really showed up in the game the other night. Working on Leighton Vander Esch.
I love that. The savvy vet looking at a rookie like, what are you doing? His hands off you.
T.J. Vasher out of Texas Tech.
Oh, holding. A little too handsy.
Yep.
And that is Isaac Taylor Stewart.
When you see the jersey stretch, it's kind of a telltale sign. There may have been a penalty committed.
Yeah, caught red-handed.
Yeah, don't make it easy for the officials, fellas.
Coming out of the backfield, Malik Davis working on Gifford.
Another guy who's come on strong and has had a strong camp the entirety of the offseason. When you talk about Malik Davis, and I pinned a story for DallasCowboys.com earlier today that says basically, although I think Rico Dowdle has done enough to maintain the lead at RB3, Malik Davis has done so well that it makes you wonder, will the Cowboys potentially carry 4 running backs?
Yeah, I saw your article on that. It's interesting because when you look at, we go downfield, it was Anthony Brown defending again. Because Ryan Nall got hurt and let go, and by the way, he had an injury settlement today, so he's now a free agent. They don't have a fullback on the roster unless you count Connor McGovern as the fullback, what might allow them to keep the 4 running backs.
Agreed. And
especially if Pollard is going to be used.
Correct.
Out in a slot.
Bill, you just made 2 of my points. One point being, if the Cowboys are really, truly serious about utilizing Pollard and Zeke at the same time, it goes to what running back Coach Skip Pete told me earlier in camp, which was they're going to then utilize the RB3 much more than a traditional team would. Now that RB4 could potentially be insurance as well as other things.
All right. Patrick No C. Walker. He's the star of this show so far. What will the next hour bring from Cowboys Night here at Ford Center at the Star in Frisco? Thanks, Patrick, and we'll see you in just a moment with the second hour.
I don't really worry about that. I try to be the best me I can be. I think, Coop brings a lot to the game. I bring a lot. I think we're very different, and it's not really up to us to make that decision. So I'm just going to be the best me I can be and, just try to help the Cowboys win any way I can.
Will Greer will try to be the best me he can be on Friday night against the Seahawks, and the playmaker Michael Irvin will be the best me he can be on Thursday. Come out to the Star at 9 a.m. as Michael and Jerry Jones face off live with Stephen A. Smith on ESPN. Then at 4 o'clock, watches your favorite Cowboys players, coaches, and alumni like Isaiah Stanback arrived to the blue carpet for the inaugural season kickoff event on Tostitos Championship Plaza at the Star in Frisco. For more information, visit thestarinfrisco.com. As we continue here, Cowboys Night here at Ford Center at the Star in Frisco. We've got some team stuff going on right now. Team fastball, 15 reps of it right now. Bill Jones, Isaiah Stanback, and Rob Phillips at DallasCowboys.com has joined us. Simi Fehoko. Isaiah, Rob has liked what he's seen out of Simi so far in this practice.
He's had a great training camp overall. I would say after the first week, he kind of settled in, guys, and has been really productive. He caught a go route there in the one-on-ones before we went to break there. He's a guy, I think, that he's building trust with Dak Prescott. And that's so important for him, and obviously he's been working with the twos mostly. But it's a tough cut at wide receiver. We talked about it in our podcast, Talking Cowboys. Go check it out, everybody. Finding out that number and who's going to make it, because Kevontae Turpin has made it very interesting as far as who's going to make that cut, because he's on the team after what he did on Saturday night.
Just to see Kevontae turn it on to the outside. There is. You talk about a pep in someone's step. There's a whole lot of pep in his step, Isaiah.
Yeah, I like him. I like him a lot. I like his determination and his will to be better. That's the thing. A lot of players in this league and a lot of players out there trying to make it to this league are perfectly satisfied being amazing at one part of their game. He's an amazing returner. Not only a kick returner, but he's an amazing punt returner. We saw that this past week. But he says that I can do that in my sleep. Like he knows that's the easy part of his game. He depends on himself to do that whenever he's called upon. This, what you're seeing right now, being a receiver, that's the aspect that he wants to continue to improve upon. And I love that work ethic for him to continue to improve so that he can be a contributor in all aspects on this team.
Well, it's so important, too, because not only if he's going to have a 53-man roster spot, but if he's going to be active every week, obviously having a kick and punt return touchdown in the same game helps your case. But if you can show that you can be part of the receiver core and be a guy, like I mentioned earlier, that Dak can trust, that carries even more value. I'm just so impressed, too, on top of what you just said, Isaiah, the fact that he has been non-stop playing football, straight from USFL into Cowboys training camp, his first NFL training camp, and has not missed a beat.
And the other thing he talked about, he's one of the older wide receivers on this roster. I mean, he's a rookie, but he's 26 years old.
It's incredible. CD didn't practice. in Los Angeles against the Chargers. Noah Brown had a little bit of a toe issue. Both are back now. But in that practice, that second practice, the longest tenured wide receiver was Simi Fehoko.
Wow.
Entering his second year, and he played all of, I think, 7 snaps on offense last year. They're young. They're very young at receiver.
And Simi turns 25 in November. You know, Tolbert, CD, and Dennis Houston are all basically the same age. They're all turned 23 in the spring. So that's how young they are. Sam Williams with a deflected pass right there.
He's working against Tyron, which is good to see. Get those veteran reps.
Can't ask for better work than that, right?
Absolutely.
Got Connor McGovern in there at left guard with the ones. Dak finding Dalton Schultz downfield.
And that's a great point, Isaiah, about Tyron, because they've been mindful of his team reps in practice. You've seen a lot of Josh Ball get some left tackle reps in his first training camp, because he got hurt early on as a rookie last year.
Rico Dowdle. Seen a lot of him in the preseason games. First 2 against the Broncos and the Chargers. See more of him on Friday night.
And I don't know how Skip Pete and the rest of the coaching staff are going to make a decision on that third running back, because all 3 of those guys have been huge contributors in this preseason so far. These guys have been running. I think they ran for 140 yards in the first game. I'm not sure what they did last week, but I know they were pretty active.
See that last play, how Terrence Steele came off the ball? I thought it was very interesting what Zach Martin said during camp about Terrence Steele. If you go back and look at the coach's film from last year, Terrence Steele at right tackle is what got that run game going for this team last year. To hear a perennial Pro Bowler like Zach Martin talk in such glowing terms about the guy to his right on that offensive line really says a lot, I think.
I think he won the respect of his teammates, Bill. He took some lumps as a rookie, you know, having to play a lot as a rookie and struggling as a rookie, and he stepped in last year and did a really nice job. The Cowboys front office feels like, you know, it's a tough decision to let Lyle Collins go, but they feel like Terrence Steele, with more and more work, and they love his approach, he could be the right tackle here for 10 years. That's really how they feel about it. And that's part of the youth. We talked about receiver, but there's youth on the line too.
Okay, I haven't got enough of Rob Phillips here. Maybe, I'm not sure if Rob's sticking around for another segment or not. We'll find out when we come back here at Cowboys Night at Ford Center at the Star in Frisco in just a moment.
I feel comfortable just because I got corner feet, you know. I'm able to guard smaller guys, able to guard tight ends very well. So I just feel comfortable and just ready to contribute.
Israel Mukwamu was flashing that corner speed, tracking down an interception against the Chargers on Saturday night, as we welcome you back here to Cowboys Night, Ford Center, the Star in Frisco. I want to let you know Dallas Cowboys single game tickets are on sale now. Limited tickets for the 2022-23 season at AT&T Stadium, available on DallasCowboys.com/tickets. So act fast. Team drills going on here. We've got Dak Prescott, the #1 offense, with the handoff to Rico Dowdle. Bill Jones, Isaiah Stanback, now joined by Nick Eatman of DallasCowboys.com. Interested in the proceedings? Good to be back home, isn't it, Nick?
Definitely good to be back home, and you know, it doesn't matter. You know, it seems like we took some of the cooler weather, not cold, but cooler weather with us. So we in the rain too. We didn't have any of that, but no, it's great to be back, and great because when you get back, you know what it means. It means it's getting closer and closer to the season.
Yep, and now that we are a week away from final cutdown day, which is on Tuesday, August 30th this year. As you look at Dalton Schultz with the grab. And what grabs you when you look at this team now a week away from the final cutdown day?
Well, you know, you guys were talking about it on the air the other night about the depth of defensive line. And I just think it's going to be really hard, obviously, to trim that down or however they get there. But I think that's one of the reasons why the defense has looked pretty good in the preseason, is because it doesn't matter where they are in the game, third quarter, fourth quarter. You've got good players that have to play on defensive line. So I think that's going to be interesting, just from a depth standpoint.
And by the way, number 92 there, Dorrance Armstrong. How about the way he has developed in his career to the point where he got a big contract, and now he's not playing in these preseason games because he's like the vested veteran alongside DeMarcus Lawrence.
I like him a lot. Dorrance Armstrong has done a heck of a job, obviously. He's earned his right, so much so that they were willing to let Randy Gregory go and trust him, along with others, to fulfill that role. I think that he's continuing to come on strong. Obviously, we talked about his availability, and that's one of the huge things that was in terms of retrospect to him and Randy Gregory. I think he was available for, over 65% of the snaps last year. Right. So he's a huge contributor, not only on the defensive line, and they expect that they have high hopes for him at the defensive end position, but also he's a bones fossil guy in terms of his contributions on special teams. So he's a huge addition for this team. He's continuing to make a big impact.
Will Greer, number 15, in at quarterback now. Malik Davis. Will Greer sounds like listening to the coach that they want to play him a lot on Friday night.
Yeah, I've seen this happen before. I've seen it play out, and I mean, you can take it all the way back to Stephen McGee, and back, I don't know what year that was,
2009. He was the draft pick.
Yeah, I remember that he played the entire game. Might have been 2010 or 11 where he played the entire third game, and he won the job. And and he didn't last forever there, but the same with Cooper Rush, that last game. So you could say, well, this game doesn't matter for some. It matters for a lot of people. And, I don't know if Greer will get the entire snaps, but I bet he gets enough to make a decision on.
And, of course, he would have gotten more of an opportunity this preseason had he not suffered the groin injury. And so they really need to see him in game action because, as all Cowboys fans know, he was picked up after the final cutdown day last year, wasn't here for the preseason games last year.
Well, and one of the reasons he didn't get a lot of snaps is because of that guy, Kevontae Turpin.
That's
he kept taking
That was the disappointing thing about Saturday's game. I think it was 52 offensive plays is all they were even able to run on.
Disappointing with air quotes?
Exactly.
It was really fun to watch.
As you're trying to gauge this offense, it was disappointing.
I'm not joking. I was down there like about the 10, 12-yard line when he got the kickoff return, and when he got to about the 15, I was like, he's gone. Like, you could just tell the way he hit that hole. Like, you're not catching him, and it was definitely blocked well.
Got the 5th-round rookie Matt Willets go in at left tackle right now. Looking for Jalen Tolbert over his head.
And that's important with Let's Go.
Yeah.
His left shoulder is where he had the injury. And now he plays left tackle. So knowing that he has to punch with that left hand is very important with those guys coming off of that edge full speed. It's going to get tested. They're going to find out whether or not he's willing to be on the roster or whether or not they need to make some decisions with him and put him on PUP or IR.
Look at you, Isaiah. I mean, I know you threw the ball around and you caught it too, but now you're blocking and now you're doing all the.
I was on all the special teams.
There you go.
Trust me, I learned how to do it all.
Now Dak in the ones out there with Micah lined up on the right side.
That's that footwork. You saw Zeke's been putting in footwork, extra footwork in the offseason the last few years, and you really started to see it show up. A lot of people can't really tell how big he is because he's all wearing the sweatsuits, underneath his uniform. But people are going to be very delighted to see a healthy Zeke out there at the beginning of this year.
He was zigging and zagging there. And again, Connor McGovern lining up at left guard with the ones here.
Nice.
Looking for Noah Brown and Trayvon Diggs defending.
You have to love the competition that these guys have. It reminds me of my time when I was here with the Dallas Cowboys, and offensively we had a lot of really good receivers. Defensively we had a lot of good defensive backs, and that competitive nature, it pays off so much when you then take that from the practice field to the games because you're not having such a huge gap in having to step up for the game, right? You've already been competing at that level all week long in practice, and that goes for every position group. The better, the more competitive each group is, the better your team is prepared to go against the game on Sundays.
I always thought that was the best thing that Des Bryant did at training camp. he would come to camp, and every day was a battle because he would talk crap and everything, and the DBs then would get them fired up. And what's happening is that as long as there's not a fight, it's a great practice. And I don't know, who was that guy for when you were playing, or even who's that guy now. But I know that they definitely bring it here in a competitive way. It's probably Parsons, actually.
Yeah.
Not as vocal as Dez, but he just.
But just his presence.
Yeah.
I mean, he just had carried he walks into the room or onto the field with a certain swagger about him that gets people's attention.
I remember at practice one day, this nice play by Tolbert.
There you go.
At practice one day, he comes off the field, Micah Parsons, and he just said, something, man, I can't believe that lady. And so some of the players were like, what are you talking about? Like, who are you looking at? Like, what lady? He's like, that ref, she's never calling anything. He was just talking about, he was just so mad. It was just a little 7-on-7 drill or something.
All right, Tony Pollard in there. I think I get asked more about Tony Pollard and how Tony Pollard's going to be used in this offense as much as anybody on the team this offseason.
Well,
people are excited about Pollard.
See, and it's going to be interesting to me how they now utilize him. Obviously, they had a perspective and an outlook in terms of how they plan to utilize him going into this year. But now, all of a sudden, a number 2 by the name of Cavante Turpin shows up, and he possesses the same skill sets that a Pollard does, but he's faster. So now, all of a sudden, okay, do we need to take Pollard out of his role and start making him do things that might be out of his comfort zone, or do we utilize the Cavante Turpins and start using him to run routes and use him for fly sweeps and all these options?
Yeah, that was going to be tricky. But I'll say this. I've said all along, I think Pollard and Zeke have to complement each other. I think Pollard, if this is going to work, Zeke's going to have to catch passes on the outside, and Pollard's going to have to get runs in the middle of the field. You're not going to keep people honest if you don't do that. So I don't know if Turpin has the exact same thing as Pollard, but I know what you're saying from a speed, dynamic element.
Absolutely.
Now I'm getting greedy now. What about all three? About put them all out there.
Hey, there's all kinds of packages. That's the thing about That's what I love about competition, because as you start having all these people rise up, the people that you expect to be in the top of the depth chart, and then you have these unknowns, right, the Turpins that show up and show the flashes and show their ability. Now all of a sudden you have so many weapons that you can utilize to put into the game and start creating packages. It's absolutely awesome.
See Cooper Rush in at quarterback to Malik Davis. You know, it's just one of the things about the preseason is just the nature. The way the Cowboys have gone about things, and there are a number of other teams that aren't playing their starters, but then there are other teams that are playing their starters. It's interesting how there's a difference of opinion in the NFL how you get your team ready for the regular season.
It's a very controversial conversation, because your number one priority coming out of the preseason is to make sure that your team is healthy, right? And you can't afford to have guys not available when the season kicks off. So with that being your number one priority, most teams like the Dallas Cowboys opt to not play their starters, their primary guys. But then there's the other side of it, where teams want to ensure that they get the year kicked off on the right foot, and they want to make sure that their starters are up to game speed. And you see teams like New England Patriots, the Kansas City Chiefs, and teams of that nature that are utilizing their guys in the preseason to get their feet wet.
You know, and I think a lot of it comes down to what do they have in terms of the offensive linemen, healthy offensive linemen, and do you want to play your offensive linemen? In the case of the Cowboys, all right, there's some questions on the offensive line. You don't want Tyron to play in the preseason. Zach Martin, you know, they're so valuable. And then if you've got younger offensive linemen, you don't want to put your veteran quarterback out there with a chance of getting hit, you know.
Yeah, it's a rough balance, that's for sure.
And then, you know, it works so well for the Rams, where they never play their starters, and what they do last year.
And it's a copycat league, so that's what a lot of teams are doing. They're looking at them and seeing their success and saying, we can do the same thing.
And then there's so many coaches who have been in that system with the Rams, they just follow along. And how about that? C.D. Lamb.
I got a stat for you here based off of what Isaiah sort of was talking about and how the Cowboys, this isn't a new approach for the Cowboys. This is what they've done. all the way back to 2010. So we're looking at like 11 years. Now 2020 doesn't really count because there was no preseason, so it's not, you can't gauge them on how they did the preseason. But every year they've had a preseason, they have not had a losing record in September since 2010. So most of this is 2-1 or some 2-2, some 3-1s in there. So I think that it's working more than you think it is, because they are coming out and having a pretty good. They're not losing in the playoffs or missing the playoffs because of September.
No.
So I think now. Is the training camp, is there a longer goal here? Does it affect you in November? I don't know, but I think the goal is get your team ready to play and stay healthy, and I think for the most part they've done that.
Don't disagree.
And there's Tony Pollard. You see, we've seen Connor McGovern working with the ones. Tyler Smith not practicing today. He is in the building, but not out there today. Haven't received word on his status.
Sure, the fans don't like to hear that. But one person that is practicing out there is number 51, Mr. Anthony Barr.
Anthony Barr.
As he continues to get conditioned for the season. Obviously, he hasn't had any preseason reps as he just got on the team a couple weeks back. He's still getting his legs underneath him after being at the house for a while. But he's going to be a great contribution to this team as well at the second level for the defense.
And the other thing with Lamb, he had the laceration on his foot and was out of practice last week, so it's good to see him out there today.
Looks good, too. I mean, you can tell just from the quickness. He's getting open. He's getting up the field. I mean, it almost feels like he's rested as well. I mean, I understand why he was out with the cut, but he looks as quick as I remember seeing him.
There you see Anthony Barr. How about the addition of Anthony Barr on this defense? A 4-time Pro Bowler with the Vikings.
Looks like another power forward up there. I mean, like these linebackers are huge. Mike is the one that's not, overly big, but like just looking at Barr and Van Der Esch, he's got a lot of size. But I think more than anything, Isaiah, is the flexibility of what you can do with Barr and Parsons and move them around. And who's rushing? Is it you? Is it me? Is it both of us? It's kind of a scary deal if he's playing to the level that we think he can play.
Dan Quinn's defense is going to look like Frankenstein. Every play is going to look like a totally different package. I'm not sure how these guys are going to keep up, but the availability and the versatility that these guys possess for Dan Quinn is going to be exceptional. He's going to be able to create different groupings that you've never seen before, simply because these guys can be at the line of scrimmage or they can be offset at the second level.
And one of the big things on Anthony Barr, too, is the fact that they had great knowledge about him, his work ethic and so forth, because of George Edwards' presence on this Cowboys staff as a senior defensive assistant. And, of course, he was the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings when going all the way back to 2014 when the Vikings drafted Anthony Barr in the first round, as that was Peyton Hendershot out of Indiana, the tight end with the catch.
Linda Wells, the tight ends coach for the Dallas Cowboys, loves Hendershot.
Loves.
Absolutely.
Capital L.
Yeah.
Loves this guy. Says he does things that no other tight end on the team can really do, and that's including the franchise tag Dalton Schultz. It's just stretching the field down the field vertically. Well, Shamplin's quick.
Yeah, he is.
Don't know what role, maybe it's a practice squad for him. I keep saying every time I see him, I really want to look at highlights from the Ivy League with him running. I mean, I just can't. I just want to see.
Can't imagine that they can stop him.
No, I mean.
He had 842 yards on 150 carries and 11 touchdowns. What's interesting about him, of course, the Ivy League, they did not play in the 2020 season due to COVID. And he also missed the 2019 season out of Long Beach Poly.
Okay.
So he was out of football for a while. He's a prime candidate for a practice squad.
We see the flag on the field right there, Bill. Those guys cut back substantially on their flags this past game. Obviously, game one was 17.
My man T.J. Vasher just went deep. The problem is the ball hadn't been snapped. He's headed to Wichita.
I think that got cut down to what, 7 penalties, I believe it was this past game? Eight was it 7 or 8?
Eight. Basically cut it in half.
Cut it in half?
Less than half.
Yeah. Progress.
So
progress. It wasn't the best though, because you look at the Chargers had 3, and And I heard you on the broadcast a couple of times that Turpin's – there we go. Oh, Hendershot. Turpin's second touchdown. It was a little iffy.
Yes.
I think it was my man Hendershot with a borderline block in the back. It's all right, though.
When you got a return guy like Kevontae Turpin, there's going to be a lot more time spent in practice and special teams and making sure that there are no blocks in the back or holding calls on special teams. Nick Eatman, we appreciate it.
Right.
And we've got much more from Cowboys Night from the Star in Frisco in just a moment. Cowboys Night continues here at the Star. Throughout the school year, more than 5,000 Arlington 5th and 8th grade students enjoyed guided tours of the Dallas Cowboys art collection at AT&T Stadium, courtesy of the Gene and Jerry Jones Family Arlington Youth Foundation. At AT&T Stadium in May, 5th and 8th grade students and their parents for the Arlington Independent School District displayed their artwork. Jessica McCarthy, wife of head coach Mike McCarthy, and Superintendent Dr. Cavazos were in attendance to congratulate the students. Nice crowd here on a Tuesday night as the Cowboys have returned home to the Star in Frisco. We've got another half hour of practice to show you here live on TXA 21 and DallasCowboys.com. Bill Jones, Isaiah Stanback, and Kyle Yeomans has rejoined us now as little pitch to Zeke out into the flat. And Kyle, what have you noticed so far as you've been watching practice over the course of the last hour?
Well, I was really impressed with what I had seen from a couple guys up front on the offensive line during the one-on-ones. And then I really thought there were a couple really good routes from Dennis Houston on corners. I mean, there were a couple different things that you could really point out, and it was good to see one-on-ones back in Cowboys practice, Isaiah, because we really looked at it from a joint practice sort of deal, and as we look up the middle to Jake Ferguson, but we had looked at it at joint practices against the Chargers and against the Broncos. You saw one-on-ones. You haven't seen that same type of intensity since maybe, the second week in Oxnard, the first day that they put on the pads?
It's been a while, simply because of the fact that, went out there, had the joint practices with Denver, straight into the transition to the preseason game. Then obviously went to L.A. Against the Chargers. So they've been competing against other teams. But now they're back home, and now you're a couple weeks away from your season kickoff. So now you're starting to see a lot more of the ones get the reps, and they're going to start ramping up the intensity because they're going to be facing the best that the league has to face.
And there you see Micah Parsons. He got in there real quickly. There were a couple reps. You talk about impressive.
Yeah.
One-on-ones, he was impressive. There was one where he turned Terrence Steele around. I don't know. I wasn't watching the stream. We were up in the press box kind of walking around, so I didn't know if they got a chance to show it. But throughout practice today, he looks like Micah Parsons. Let's just say it that way. Maybe Micah Parsons times 2. I mean, he's been really, really impressive.
Sure that wasn't a dance routine they recited?
Are you sure?
I'm not
Did you get to see it? Did you see the
I did not.
Okay.
I did not.
It was nasty. Let's say it that way. It was nasty.
Well, he is a nasty player, Kyle. He's kind of that dude. That's a nice pass and catch right there. Jalen Tolbert, somebody we've been talking about, needs to continue to be more consistent in his rookie debuts. He hasn't had a lot of opportunities. He had 7 attempts, I think, in the first game that he had against Denver. Two completions out of those 7. Last week we saw some more come his way. I think he just has to continue to try to bring those things down. I think he has a lot of chemistry, and it's starting to fall into the same conversation as a Dennis Houston. I think he has a lot of chemistry with Dak Prescott, but in the preseason it plays against him because he doesn't have that same chemistry with the Cooper Rush and Greer.
Yeah, I want to talk more about Micah Parsons here in a minute because that's exactly what you were kind of leading into. But on Tolbert, I mean, early in practice, he had some opportunities that went through his hands. He's getting targeted.
Yes, he is.
They are peppering the ball to him, and he's going up against Trayvon Diggs. So if you need to see some improvement and you need to see him catch the football against the best of the best, he's doing it against an all-pro throughout this drill, and they continue to feed him the football.
Yeah, he is a guy that's continually getting better. And that's what you want to see out of a rookie. I don't care where you're drafted at. Obviously, they took him out in the third, and they're going to depend on him heavily, especially with the uncertainty regarding Michael Gallup and James Washington.
Parsons got in there again. You want to go back to what you were talking about with him?
Yeah, Parsons, look what he did last year as a rookie. He stepped out of the fold in terms of playing linebacker. They had a big need on the defensive line and trying to create some pressure, so they brought him down, and he was just as effective, just as dangerous on the line of scrimmage. He's a guy that you could play absolutely anywhere. I think if you put him at safety or cornerback, he would be just as successful as well. He might challenge Trayvon for the interceptions, but he's just one of those athletes that you just love to have on your team, and he has a will and a work ethic as well. Everybody loves him. He's just that guy that you just play, and I hope that you have him on your roster for his whole career.
Throughout this drill, that's the third passes. Look, there's some pushing and shoving between Tristan Hill and Osa Odigizua. A couple defensive linemen getting after it. But that's the third time he's caught a contested ball, Tolbert. And you saw Coach Prince, the first-year wide receivers coach, streaking down the sideline, going to give him a high five. I mean, that's the kind of play you want to see from Tolbert, and the coaching staff has started to take notice, at least here in this session.
Yeah, it's going to be also interesting to see if he makes any contributions on special teams. As we start talking about the depth chart at the receiver position, obviously he's pretty much a lock to make the roster with him being a third-round draft pick. He has time on his side, but he still has to show up and be dressed on game days. And we mentioned earlier that 53 guys make this roster, but 48 guys suit up. Well, you don't want to be a part of those 5 guys that are sitting in street clothes on the sidelines.
Cooper Rush in there at quarterback. Rico Dowdle showing some burst there. How about Jabril Cox on defense at linebacker, where we saw him for the first time in the preseason on Saturday night?
Jabril Cox, I think he's doing great in terms of his straight line, his linear speed. The jury's still out for me, at least, on his ability to be able to move in space laterally. And that's one of the more challenging things when you're dealing with somebody who's coming off of an ACL injury. Yes, he's practicing. Yes, he's playing in some games. Yes, he's doing those things. But is he back to who he was when they drafted him? I'm not sure.
That's a big question, because that was his strength when they drafted him last season, was they want to see the change of direction. Nice play by Luke Gifford going to the edge. But I really like what I had seen in terms of his, like you said, Jabril Cox, and his ability to go downhill, which is something he wasn't known for at LSU. But with the change of direction and an ACL injury, he's got to get back to what he was, because that was his strength. That was his calling card, was his ability to cover at the second level. He's got to do better at that, even following the injury, because that's how you make it in the league, is you play your strengths to your extra strength.
Yeah, and one of the things that, from somebody who's had a lot of injuries, every time I was injured, it forces you to now learn how to be better in other areas. So if you were relying on your speed and your agility and all those things because that was your strong suit, all of a sudden you have an injury that takes that away from you. Now you have to elevate your game into being downhill and being able to fill those gaps and things of those nature that he needed to improve upon. So when he does become 100% healthy, if he's not there already, now that's an added element that he can put into his bag.
You can see, just watching this practice, you can see the work that this team is getting in, and they'll have 2 straight padded practices this week. Mike McCarthy talked about the fact that he likes it. Obviously, he liked it the one day working out in the joint practice with the Broncos in Denver, and then 2 days last week with the Chargers, and especially with the ones, that's their real opportunity to show what they can do during this preseason. And as he said, prior to this practice today, it depends on how the ones do in practice the next 2 days, whether they'll play on Friday night. Well, I think he had a pretty good idea how they're going to do in practice the next 2 days.
Yeah, but I thought one of the quick things on that is the quality of reps for younger players too, because you've had such quality reps for your starters and you've been able to go and put so much work in these joint practices and prior to preseason games. The younger guys, he said he's never seen it before, just how quality of work that these young guys have been able to put in on the road against Denver, on the road against LA, and now you come back home and you'll get to see it again on Friday against Seattle. But he feels good about their readiness at that point, and I think that plays a big factor, is meshing the workload for the veterans in practice and then what the younger guys get during the preseason games.
Well, and the other part of that is you've got 2, when you have the joint practices, you got 2 fields going at the same time.
It's massive.
And one of the reasons that all NFL teams have a difficult time in these preseason games once the 2s and the 3s get in the games, they just don't get very many reps in practice. And when you have more joint practices, they actually have more opportunities then because there's more time allowed for them to get some reps.
You're not alternating. You're not alternating between
right.
offense and defense. Everybody's getting work simultaneously, and these guys are getting a ton of reps today. You're talking about the ones and their ability to be ready for week 1 without having to play the preseason. Well, these back-to-back padded practices, these coaches are ensuring that these guys get their fair share of reps.
This is as busy of a practice as we've seen. And they've filled up the 2 hours, don't get me wrong. But in terms of the reps and the team drills and then even the one-on-ones that we saw earlier, that is a ton of work.
You see it right there on Ferguson's face. he's one of the young bucks on the team, and he's hurting. These guys are getting a lot of work right now.
He's trying to huff and puff him back into the huddle.
Well, think of their schedule. Okay, they played the game, and Ferguson played a lot in the game on Saturday night, and then they were off on Sunday, and they got back at the wee hours of the morning. Kyle, you were on the flight, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
So it was 6 in the morning or so. But
yep.
On the plane.
Got home in bed at 7.
Yeah.
The sun was already up. I mean, it was coming.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting morning.
You got Monday, and then now you're back on the practice field with practices on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Thursday's the day before a game. So this is their work week. It's a very important work week for a lot of players on this team.
And kind of playing off of that as well, I mean, there's no Tyler Smith in this practice. We've probably talked about that, I would assume, at some point throughout, that he's not in pads. He's taking a day off. I don't know if there's anything more to that. I don't have any breaking news here to report, but Mike McCarthy always talks about how much they pay attention to the numbers. They pay attention to GPS and workload on these players. Yes, he's a rookie, but he's a rookie that, to a certain extent, is expected to play a massive role throughout 17 games this season. He's played over 100 snaps in the first 2 preseason games. He's played in all 3 joint practices, the 2 in L.A., the 1 in Denver. He has had a ton of work. It wouldn't surprise me if a rookie gets a day off.
That's a great point.
A lot of work.
That's what we were talking about earlier. Well, you don't normally see rookies get a rest day, but I mean, you can see that, but especially if they're going to get him work again on Friday.
Exactly.
Game,
or tomorrow. I mean, back-to-back padded practices.
Yeah.
He may have just had to choose which one he wasn't going to be a part of, or the coaching staff would have had to make that decision. But then, yeah, if he's back in for tomorrow and he's back in for Friday, that's exactly what that was. It's just an opportunity for him to take a load off and to get ready for what could be a long season.
So the way they may be doing it here is McGovern has had similar snaps in the games the last couple of weeks, and so Tyler, it might be his day of rest today. He's in there tomorrow, and Connor McGovern will be on the side.
Very good point, because you do have that ability to keep those guys in, to allow the guys around them to not suffer from a day off. Because if you had both of those guys out there, you wouldn't give the same work to Terrence Steele and to Tyler Biadasz moving forward.
But at what point do you make the decision on who's going to be your starter? Because you need the chemistry between Tyron Smith and Tyler Biadasz.
Oh, you need to make that decision this week, probably, right?
So maybe, let's just speculate that that's the strategy. You give them both a day of practice, and then they got a game on Friday. Are you doing that so that they are fresh and ready to go on Friday to give it their best shot as they battle for the starting position?
So if that's the case, I would hate to be Tyler Smith because he has the closest day to the game.
But he's younger.
Yeah, I was about to say, he just drew the younger straw.
The short straw.
Connor McGovern has the vet card that he can play. If that is the case, Bill, and you got to give credit to credit where credit is due with Connor McGovern. Tyler Smith came in expecting to win that job, right? Yep. You could ask anybody that Tyler Smith was going to be your starting left guard week 1. Connor McGovern hasn't lost that job. This job, the left guard spot, is going to go to whoever wins it. That's a good problem for the Cowboys. It's not who loses that job, who plays poorer than the other one, or more poorly. I don't even know what the correct English there would be. But Connor McGovern has done well enough to this point where he's only given up 2 pressures. He hasn't given up a sack. It's been both hurries in these preseason games, and he's played well enough in practice to where it's not a cut and dry decision. He has battled a first rounder to the brink and making Tyler Smith earn this job because he's played good enough to keep it.
I was checking out the Houston Texans, and Kenyon Green, who is the guard out of Texas A&M, who was their first-round draft pick, he hasn't earned the starting position with the Houston Texans yet right now. Now, that doesn't mean in the case of Kenyon Green that they've soured on him. And in the case of the Cowboys, just because Tyler Smith doesn't have that number one job right now doesn't mean that the Cowboys don't have the same hope for him in his career that as on draft day they expected when they picked him in the first round.
No, if you see Connor McGovern out there as the starting left guard against Tampa Bay, he earned it. He earned that job. He allowed himself, because they're not going to throw Connor McGovern out there if he's not ready to be your starter against Tampa Bay when on the other side of the line of scrimmage, you've got Vita Vea coming straight up the middle. It's not going to happen. They're not going to just throw somebody out there for a formality of the veteran winning the job. Connor McGovern's earned it.
Especially when you've got a offensive guard who had not played offensive guard until he got into the NFL.
Great point.
Because he was offensive tackle at Tulsa.
And the culture around this organization has changed. There's no more entitlement. There's no more slotting simply because you were a high draft pick. You have to earn your keep. And I think that's a great thing for this team and this organization.
What does that say about Kelvin Joseph on the defensive end, though?
Oh, my goodness. I think they're going to have some tough decisions to make, Kyle. I think this is a very important week for him. He's not going to be able to be a guy this Friday. He needs to be a dude.
So we'll keep an eye on number 1 against the Seattle Seahawks, who, by the way, I think Drew Lock will get a lot of playing time. He missed last week's game. He was on the COVID list last week. The Cowboys are playing on Friday. But we were talking earlier, though, Kyle, it's very interesting just how many position battles there are right now. And you look around the league, and the way it's become in the NFL, these position battles are pretty much determined when you put the roster together, when you draft and when you sign players in free agency. Really, when you get into training camp, you pretty much know, unless there's an injury, who's going to make the team. There are a bunch of them that are up in the air right now here in the last week of the preseason.
No, I agree. And the fact of the matter is, you're right, is from a generality standpoint, you know what your roster is going to look like. That's why you draft the way you do in April, and then you work your way into minicamp, and you work your way into OTAs with that in mind. But you're also assuring what you already think. And some players can change minds of coaches. Look at Dennis Houston. Nobody had an undrafted free agent out of Western Illinois as a surefire running with the first team whenever you come out to the final week of training camp and the final preseason game. He has done that. He's changed the minds of a lot of these guys. You would probably think it's Jalen Tolbert taking all those snaps. And sure, Tolbert's played a lot of football, but ultimately it's been Dennis Houston that's been a surprise. You could say the same thing on the other side. DeRon Bland came in kind of under the radar, late round pick, 5th round pick. All of a sudden he's challenging to be in the conversation as a backup starting corner.
Big day tomorrow, open practice. The public is invited again out here from 6 to 8 o'clock. And then on Thursday, come out to the Star bright and early, 9 a.m. Thursday morning. Michael Irvin, Jerry Jones face off live with Stephen A. Smith on ESPN. Then at 4, watch as your favorite Cowboys players, coaches, and alumni arrive on the blue carpet for the inaugural season kickoff event on Tostitos Championship Plaza at the Star in Frisco. For more information, visit thestarinfrisco.com.
What are you going to wear, Isaiah?
I don't know. I was going to go to Bill's closet and see what I can find in there.
A couple sequins. See the shiny. Bill's got some good stuff. He did borrow a tie from me once. That was an honor.
That's right.
He borrowed a tie for me in the middle of a filming, and that was one of the greatest fashion honors of my life, is that Bill Jones thought it was good enough.
It was the only tie in the place.
Bill, I'll pay you $20 if you show up to that event without socks on.
Bribery.
Because we know you won't be wearing socks.
Probably
That's
not.
right.
My fiance won't let me.
Looks like we're in a little 2-minute now, huh?
Kind of surprised it's taken this long to get to 2-minute drills.
2-minute end of game. Cooper Rush working it right now. Going deep down the sideline.
There's Kelvin.
Kelvin Joseph. You want Kelvin to make a play?
That's a great interception right there. That was a really good play. Now he just wishes he would have waited to make that on Friday.
He can maybe make it on Friday.
He just needs to do it again on Friday.
Correct.
That's a good play. Didn't look like a best ball, though.
Yeah, it was a bad ball.
It's on put on his back hip of Brendan Smith.
But Brandon Smith, I mean, think about guys like him. All he's done is show up and execute. But even though he's just shown up and executed and done really well in the games, it still most likely is not going to be enough to make the roster here with the Dallas Cowboys. And that's very difficult. I don't think most people understand how challenging that is. Now, he's still auditioning for a bunch of other teams, and if he doesn't get picked up, he still has an opportunity to come back to the Dallas Cowboys. But we just talked about the depth at the receiver position, and they're making it very difficult for guys like him to have a chance at making this roster.
He's had a great preseason.
Yes.
He's played well in camp. He hasn't done anything that would constitute him not being on the roster. It's just the fact of the matter that you have position players that have either done more, like a Dennis Houston, or have been more impressive consistently, or are a high draft pick, and that's Jalen Tolbert. So it's happened in the NFL for years.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's how it goes. Guys get slipping through the cracks, and then you go somewhere else, or you stick on a practice squad until you finally get your opportunity to shine. He's done a really good job throughout training camp.
Yep, Brandon Smith out of Iowa was on the Cowboys practice squad last year. And, you go across the league, and there's so many players, wide receivers like that.
No doubt.
Who spend maybe a year or two on a practice squad, and then finally they get an opportunity.
Take advantage of the reps that you're given. Like I said, you're obviously here with the Dallas Cowboys. You're doing everything that you can to make that team. But at the same time, the film that you put out there, that's your resume.
Look at Jalen Tolbert getting the ball peppered to him.
He's getting a lot of balls thrown his way today.
It's the second one in this 2-minute drill. He has been working hard.
Dak working to him again.
I was impressed seeing Terrence Steele single arm holding off Micah Parsons coming off the edge with some fire out of his butt. That was good, man. Micah Parsons was working hard. Terrence Steele looked like he was calm and collected.
That's a nice turnaround, no pun intended, from what we saw earlier in practice when he was turned around.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing about Terrence Steele is you ask coaching staff or the coaching staff and you say, what do you want to see out of Terrence Steele this year? And it's consistency. He's got the tools to do it. He's already shown that. There's a reason why he is your starting right tackle heading into the season. He has that opportunity because he has what it takes, but he's just got to do it on a consistent basis if he's going to really improve this offensive line.
I like his fire. We saw that show up in Denver. Loved every bit of it. Now, obviously, you don't want to see guys fighting and all that, but you do want to see guys stand up for themselves and don't allow their teammates to get disrespected. And that's exactly what you saw at Terrence Steele a couple weeks ago against Denver.
All right, we've seen Let's Go in this practice. How concerned are you as we get down to cut-down day at the swing tackle position?
I'm a little concerned. I am. If you had to ask me where I'm most concerned on the team, it would probably be the swing tackle competition. And the reason why is because Matt Waletzko looked like the more ready of the two against Josh Ball early in camp. And now Waletzko a bit hindered with the shoulder injury. He's actually practiced quite well today. I've been impressed with what I've seen, of course, knowing that the shoulder injury is there.
Contested ball, 3 against 3. Dennis Houston, Anthony Brown.
But Josh Ball, he's had every opportunity to win that job.
Yes.
It's kind of the opposite of what I was talking about with Connor McGovern in the early parts of this segment. Connor McGovern hasn't lost that job. Josh Ball hasn't won his. He's had that job. He had the chance to take the swing tackle spot, and now they're pulling a guy back off of an injury, maybe quicker than he's even ready to go with Matt Waletzko to show Josh Ball may not be able to get the job done this season. Doesn't mean he's not going to have a career in the NFL or that you need to cut him, but at the same time, he's just not ready yet, and if that's the case, I'm worried at swing tackle. That's a position that has been extremely valuable for this team, especially when you have guys like Terrence Steele, Tyron Smith that are going to move around, have some injury history to them. You need a swing tackle.
That's a good point, too, because had they been confident in what Josh Ball has shown them to date, then it might have been more apt to go ahead and say, hey, let's go ahead and redshirt you.
Exactly.
But the fact that he's out here playing with a shoulder injury and doing everything he can lets you know that, hey, if you can go, we like to have you.
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, Bill. You brought it up. You said, if he can go, great, then let's do it. But if he can't go, then now we know. We can put him on an injured list and maybe go get somebody.
They don't want to hear can't go. They want to hear, well, let's go.
I love it.
That was teed up for you, and you swung and knocked that out of the park, my friend.
And it says a lot about him. He knows that this is crunch time right now. If he's gonna be on a 53-man roster this season, he's got to show it this week.
Isaiah, you and I got the chance to talk to him earlier in the offseason, and you kind of got that feel. He's a tough guy.
He is tough.
He's not going to let anything go past him without giving it his best shot.
He's a hard worker, and you can see the intensity and the anticipation that he has. He wants to be out there. It's unfortunate that he sustained that injury and it's kept him out of most of this offseason. But, you know, he's going to try everything he can this week, as Bill mentioned earlier. Oh, no. As Bill mentioned earlier, you know, they have to find out over this next week whether or not he can go, because they have decisions to make.
There's Donovan Wilson coming across. And team gathered at midfield here at Ford Center.
Got something going on.
They're going to keep it going. Scheduled to go with the 2-minute end of game to wrap up practice. Looks like they'll keep it going here.
Heard John Fossil, who loves, by the way, he lives for the fact that he's the referee and the mic during these practices. Says 4th down and 9. It was they said it was an offsides penalty or whatever. So they're setting up a 4th down.
See, that is also the beauty of these practices, is you can set up scenarios, and which you don't ordinarily get. You can't predict what's going to happen in a preseason game. You might only get 52 offensive plays in a game, like it happened on Saturday night.
Mike McCarthy talked about that specifically with the Denver and the Chargers joint practices, is you can not only do that and put scenarios out there, but you can say, I want to see Jalen Tolbert against man coverage. So, hey, defensive coordinator from L.A., I want you to put this guy in man coverage and let's throw him the football and force feed him that. It gives you a much more controlled environment to test your team out.
You can also use these officials to make some calls to teach a lesson or two along the way, too.
Love it.
The lessons you don't have to learn in the preseason.
Going deep down the sideline.
Is that Houston again?
And it's Trayvon Diggs defending.
Dak loves Houston.
That was a good ball, too.
It was a
put it on
ball.
the money.
He dropped it in the bucket. Dak and Dennis Houston have so much chemistry. It's amazing. It's almost unfathomable in terms of that undrafted guy and the top, your top tier quarterback in the NFL having that kind of chemistry. They have no way. They're not invested in him financially. But Dak is wholeheartedly invested into him in terms of getting him the opportunities in practice.
What does that tell you about Dennis Houston, undrafted out of Western Illinois, to step on campus here at the Star in Frisco back in May and get with Dak Prescott? It says so much about his work ethic, his maturity, and how he wants to be a part of things right off the bat. It kind of reminds me of a Dak Prescott, his rookie year in 2016.
Maybe that's why they have such a mutual respect for each other, because he always, when you looked at some of the conversations and interviews that they've had with Dennis Houston, one of the main things that he said was, I came in here and I just wanted to study and learn. He just wanted to make sure he put that work in, because you can't perform at your best if you don't know what you're doing.
Here comes D-Law. There you go. Cavante.
Was it a rib?
I think he got the air knocked out of him.
Yeah.
He got the air knocked out of him.
Got the football, though.
Yep.
And for those that don't know what it is to get the air knocked out of you, you see some lights. I'll put it like that. It hurts. It comes back to you after about a minute or two, but you just need a moment. That's what you see him taking right there.
Look at Zeke coming over and giving him props. How about that? That shows the respect that he's earned in such a short amount of time. Look, yeah, he told Britt Brown there, he said,
a minute.
Just give me a second.
Yeah.
Did you have a flashback right there,
Absolutely.
Isaiah?
Yeah, there's
any particular moment?
Oh, my goodness. I had
Would you like to share?
I got the wind knocked out of me just like that in high school, Bill. You go all the way back to high school. And here we go right here. Let's see it. Ball. Dak does a great job stepping up in the pocket, finding a little seam, deliver the ball on the rope. Bam. You see when he landed right on that
ball.
Yeah, that all the air in your body is gone. You're gasping for whatever's out there. You see him right there? Ooh, let me just give me a second.
You got back up, though, so that's good. I liked what D-Law did on that play, too, rip it in there. Look at the strength there.
To the corner of the end zone.
No, I don't think he came down with it.
Trayvon doing some talking.
He's hyped right now, and they're going right at him. Dak is not giving him any respect. He said, you got to earn this keep.
Is that Noah Brown?
Yes.
Looked like it, yeah.
Yep. We're reaching the final minute or two here before we have to sign off here on TXA 21. It's been great to be able to watch a practice where the Cowboys really have gone at it the last couple of hours here.
It's been a lot of good work today.
Giving the fans a show, too. On air, in the building. Lots of great work and entertaining work to watch.
That's right, and do it again tomorrow if you're in the area. Free of charge here at the Star in Frisco. It's another 6 o'clock practice tomorrow night. And then the blue carpet is rolled out on Thursday.
Ooh, no sock Kyle.
There you go.
No sock Bill. What are you talking about?
And then Friday night, it's Cowboys and the Seahawks, the final preseason game. And then Kyle Yeomans will be here on Saturday for the Jerry Jones Classic. High school football, Cedar Hill against Rockwall. That's going to do it for us here on Cowboys Night here at the Star in Frisco. Bill Jones, Isaiah Stanback, Kyle Yeomans, everyone who's been a part of this one. Patrick Nosey, Walker, Rob Phillips, and Nick Eatman. And maybe they can get this one play off before we sign off in 5 seconds here on Cowboys Night at the Star.